Mabuhay Manila! Today, you are in for a treat as we review the current top of the line of the Realme 9 series, which is the Realme 9 Pro Plus. The Realme 9 Pro Plus is shiny indeed. Our first impression of the device made us think about why does Realme end up detailing the phone chassis well and very sparkly. I mean, being frank, we love to see those glossy sparkle finish, light shift design, very dazzling device, but we tend to put phone cases or protector on it. Some of us only appreciate it only from the moment we open it up from the box, then boom, phone case. No more aesthetics. Kidding aside, let's go ahead and tackle what Realme has to offer on this new edition. Let's start it off with the build material. Well, polycarbonate plastic is really a thing nowadays because it is much stronger material and cheaper to make than using aluminum. I get it, for its price, it really is something Realme has to compromise. Getting back, the device is prone to fingerprint smudges because of the gloss finish, but it isn't a problem actually. The curved edges of the device concave look very expensive and the depth of the camera module is not that thick. The glass back looks fragile and flashy, but we can see that strong materials were used to withstand a certain drop. Moving up at the front, it is reinforced with Gorilla Glass 5, 6.4 inches of screen, 1080 by 2400 pixels with Super AMOLED screen with a 90Hz refresh rate. The fingerprint sensor is navigated on the lower mid of the phone screen. In addition to that, if we navigate to Realme Lab, it has a heart rate monitor feature, wherein you have to put your finger on the middle bottom of the screen. It's a great feature for a phone and we think that all phones should have that kind of feature like Realme's. In terms of brightness, it projects 430 nits up to 1000 nits peak of brightness. It gives good color output since it has a 98% NTSC wide color gamut and works great even under the sun. Moving to the interface, it has a 3.5mm audio jack, speakers, a USB Type-C charging port, and lastly, two buttons on the left side for volume and other accessibilities, and the lock screen button located on the right side of the phone. The feel of the phone on your hands feels great when handling, especially when texting, scrolling, and watching videos. It is not hard to handle the phone even though it's big and long. All jokes aside, the Realme 9 Pro Plus is running on MediaTek Dimensity 925G with a 6nm processing. It is an octa-core processor with a splash of Mali G68 MC4 for its GPU. Memory and storage-wise, it has an 8GB of memory paired with 256GB of storage. It also runs on Android 12 with Realme UI 3.0. For the battery, it has a 4500 mAh with a 60W fast charger. Let's dive into gaming and see what this device is made of. And by the way, we intentionally charge it to 100% to check how great the battery is and how much battery it could eat up while doing the game benchmarks. First in line is Mobile Legends. Our settings are in ultra graphics and high frame rate. We were not surprised because we had our FPS sitting around 60 FPS all the time. It only drops down to 57 when there are clashes or the moments are heated. So it is safe to say that it plays around 57 to 60 FPS. We won't even bother doing lower graphics because on that benchmark, we made it clear that Mobile Legends is not a spec intensive game and almost all smartphones can run it today. And the phone was not heating up at all and wasn't even that warm. It didn't even sweat running Mobile Legends on Ultra. Another MOBA game we tried is League of Legends Wild Rift. We tweaked the settings by aiming for a 60 frame rate, graphics quality set to high, FX quality set to medium, resolution on high, and post-processing off. We had around 57 to 60 FPS throughout the game, but there are times that we're just walking around the map and it would drop to 57. We are not sure if it's a system bug or just not that optimized for Wild Rift, but it is very playable and sitting around 57 to 60 FPS is pretty decent. And you wouldn't even notice the FPS, it seems like you're just playing at 60 FPS all day long. Next up is we tried PUBG Mobile. At first, we used smooth graphics with extreme frame rate settings. Since PUBG only allows up to 60 FPS, we capped at 60 and it was very smooth and there was no compromise while playing the game even on combat. We had 60 FPS throughout the game and the graphics are decent and the details are still crisp even though the settings are in smooth mode. On the other hand, we also tried the HD graphics with ultra frame rate and the details are much better. It renders faraway objects and we had around 54 to 58 FPS for the HD graphics. It is still quite decent, plus the device was not hot at all. Next is Call of Duty Mobile. As we first tried the multiplayer with a low graphics quality and max frame rate, the game quality was still decent, plus the game was really smooth. We had around 58 to 60 FPS while playing the multiplayer. It was easy to track down enemies and spray them with bullets as it doesn't have an issue with FPS drops or so. The next thing we did was play the Battle Royale, which is a heavier game mode than the multiplayer. We had the same settings as well. Second to the last is a AAA game called Honkai Impact 3. We set the settings into performance mode and tweaked the combat and out of combat settings to 60 frame rate. Then we started the game. We had our FPS playing around 57 to 60 FPS all throughout the game. We underestimated the phone's potential and we really got disappointed with the results. It is a great phone for a CPU-GPU intensive game. For our last game, we put it to the real test if it could reach 60 FPS mark, so we played Genshin Impact. All settings were set to low and set the frame rate to 60 FPS. In general, our FPS played around 37 to 46 FPS. When in combat, our FPS plays around 37 to 44 FPS. And when out of combat, it plays around 40 to 46 FPS. Although, even out of combat, there are still some FPS drops to 37 because of the shaders of the grass. Genshin Impact is considered a AAA game after all. It is decently played and those FPS drops would only stick around 1 to 2 seconds, especially when we cast our special skills. The game demands a higher model for the 60 FPS mark. Plus, for those geeks out there, we know that Snapdragon chipsets are more optimized than MediaTek's. So that claims a point why this game is not hitting the FPS mark or even scratches the surface of 50 FPS mark. Then again, it is playable and quite smooth for the gaming experience. And for the battery, after benchmarking for almost 2 hours, it is now left at 68%. It is borderline mediocre and decent as it has 4500 mAh, and in the span of 2 hours of playing, it ate up around 32% of the battery. We can't say it's bad and we can say it's good too, due to the fact that we left the phone running on 90Hz all the time and tweaked the game settings for the highest refresh rate possible. No wonder it comes with a 60-watt charging brick. Moving on, moment that you're all been waiting for, the cherry on top content, the camera specs. The back cameras have 3 lenses. It features a 50 megapixel main camera, 8 megapixel ultrawide, and 2 megapixel macro. Plus it shoots 4K at 30 FPS, 1080p at 30, 60, 120, and 480 FPS, and 720p with an astounding 960 FPS for cleaner slow-mos. Meanwhile, at the front, the selfie camera has a 16 megapixel wide angle. The main camera is fused with Sony IMX766 OIS camera. It is said that the Sony IMX766 OIS camera helps reduce darker shots, gives steadier shots, and cleaner images. Let's start using the 50 megapixel main camera and see what the Sony IMX766 has to offer. We took sample shots in our studio first. In a controlled environment, we tried to shoot the Realme 9 Pro. We used the 50 megapixel main camera and the color quality is decent. It was not hazy after all, and we tried to play with it and use the night mode on the studio for the device shoot, and it really gave us vibrant colors and deep depth of blacks. The next thing we did was shoot outdoor, and here are the shots. As you can see, the colors are still accurate, and the banana leaves projects a deep green color tone, which makes it super realistic. Next is we used the 8-megapixel ultra-wide with the same shot of the banana trees, and we were not amazed by the output because it was kinda hazy and the color projection was not accurate. The grass smoothed out and it has no sharpness at all. Maybe it works great when using it for a family photo or other faraway scenic view. The next is the 2-megapixel macro. The shots were actually standard and mediocre. When we zoom in on the photo, the details are kind of bit fuzzy and there are some chromatic aberrations. But looking at the picture as a whole, we can appreciate the texture and the detail of what we took. Next is we tried the portrait mode. The background is just pure bokeh, very creamy. It is a great portrait camera that works great, and we can't help but compare it to the iPhone's portrait mode. To be fair, we can say that Realme has something to say. Next is the 16-megapixel selfie camera. I took photos of myself, of course, and the colors are amazing. Very detailed photos, and tried it on several backgrounds to play around with the colors. As time passed by, we took our chance to shoot in dark mode. The difference is pretty big, especially that we were shooting in plain black and even our naked eyes can't see, but this camera can. It gives details on what we were shooting at even though we can't see the shots we were aiming for. The details of the course are not super sharp because it is dark, but the image quality is clean, not a lot of camera noise, and makes it brighter. We were quite amazed at the output it has given us from the night mode. And lastly, the street photography. This is where Sony IMX766 takes place. We took shots from the 24mm and it is the camera's sweet spot and fighting point. This shot from the 24mm with 1.8 f-stop doesn't seem like it was taken from a smartphone. Quality kind like this is typically taken by a DSLR. But the Sony IMX really is something. Look at how vibrant that is. From the greens to the blacks and the yellows. Everything is accurate and no degradation of quality. Processing time when shooting from the street feature takes about 4 seconds. Although, when shooting with the normal 50-megapixel camera, it takes milliseconds to process. The camera is great for spontaneous shots because it has fast response time. I was actually surprised with the 50mm street because it is way better than the portrait mode of the phone itself. The 50mm street feature lets you shoot a wide-angle shot with a lot of bokeh background to work with. All I can say is that the 50mm street mode is a portrait mode on crack. To wrap things up, we had a blast on showcasing the Realme 9 Pro Plus, and it really beats our expectation. In terms of price point, it is retailed at $23,990, and we wouldn't even be surprised at that price point. The Realme 9 Pro Plus is a real go-to mid-range device and gives a lot of benefits and use for its price. The camera speaks for itself, and you can get a decent selfie and a professional shot from the main camera to justify your own satisfaction. Also, there are a lot of people who are confused on why their Realme 9 Pro specs are better than the Pro Plus. I hate to bring it to you, but the Pro Plus has a lot of features that Pro doesn't. We're talking about the Super AMOLED display, 256 storage, Sony IMX766 that is infused on the camera, a 60-watt charging device, plus it is lighter than the Pro if that counts. I mean, these kinds of specs are not usually on the mid-range side of the phone industry. Well, Realme made it possible for us consumers and tech fanatics. It has a flagship design and specs with a mid-range price point. While you asked for it, Realme delivered. And by the way, what do you guys think about this device? Let us know in the comment section below, and thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you will be updated with our future contents. Also, don't forget to visit manilashaker.com for more tech news, reviews, and comparison of the latest device. Once again, this is Jacob and mabuhay, Manila.